Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to go to Shanghai and speak with Dan Collins, publisher of the China Money Report. Dan Collins, welcome back to the Keiser Report.
Thanks, Max. Good to be back.
All right, Dan Collins, The Economist magazine says that U.S.-China relations will define global politics in 2013. Where do you think the relations are going here?
Well, yeah, I saw that piece. I pretty much agree with it. I think a subplot to the piece was really how China-Japan turns out for 2013. 2012, we saw massive tensions here in China. You know, not far from where I live here, there was a Panasonic factory burned down. Tens of thousands of Chinese hit the streets.
Hold on a second, Dan. Hold on a second. What you said that a Panasonic factory was burned down? I didn't see that in the news. What's going on there?
Oh, come on, Max. You got to check China Money Report. I reported on that. Yeah, there's a factory was burned down out here in Suzhou, a little suburb of Shanghai here. Little suburb, 12 million people. But there's a Japanese street here. The entire Japanese restaurants, stores all had the windows broken out. I mean, it was really bad. It was reported in the major media about the protests, but I don't think outside China people really understood how bad it really was. I mean, you had Chinese. There were many reports of even local Chinese people here being dragged out of their Japanese cars and beaten, and that's what's led to 70% decline in Japanese car sales in China. And they're not coming back.
We have a currency war, as some describe it. It looks like it's heating up to a ground war, a hot war, and especially with this China-Japan conflict, which seems to be escalating. And Japan, of course, is got a new leader, and they have committed themselves to crunching and crashing and destroying their currency, the yen, as an attempt to export their way back into fiscal and monetary and economic health. But a lot of people note that this will lead potentially to Japan being the first of the G7 nations to experience a currency collapse or hyperinflation. Is China, as the world's biggest creditor and with the biggest cash reserves in their sovereign reserves, $3 trillion in reserves, over $1 trillion in U.S. dollars, are they going to use that money to help attack Japan? You know what I'm saying? As part of the global currency war, are they going to use the money? Are we going to see a money war here, money, weapons of mass financial destruction? Dan Collins.
Yeah, in 2013, Max, I think we're going to see currency wars, and I think we're going to see conventional wars. The conventional side, China warned just today about Japan sending out fighter jets over the islands, the Diaoyu Islands, what Japan refers to as the Senkaku Islands. China is now sending passenger planes over the islands weekly, triggering the Air Force defense of Japanese to try to see what the defenses are like there. China is now sending a fleet around the islands. The tensions are just getting worse and worse down there. The people I talk to over here really see no way around this, and nobody knows how we're going to possibly solve this problem. In 2013, my major concern on the conventional side is that someone's going to get trigger happy, someone's going to get a plane shot down or a boat shot down, and then we're off to the races. I don't see it escalating beyond that next year, but long term, nobody's clear how this is going to be solved. On the currency side, Japan is absolutely in a death throes on their economy. They're spending twice what they take in receipts. As you mentioned, the LDP has just come back into power. Now their plans to fix the economy after 30 years of Keynesian failed policies is they're going to print more money. And they want to pass a new budget despite already spending twice what they take in. They want to spend more money. They want to print more money. It's going to drive they will get the currency lower like they want. It's not going to help the exporters. Japanese corporates have just gotten weaker and weaker over the decades. They can no longer compete. They've been losing money on televisions for 10 years. Apple has replaced Sony. The Koreans have replaced Japan in many areas of consumer electronics, taking away a lot of the car markets. So Japan is in real trouble. I see them really having to batter down the hatches in 2013. They may actually enjoy stoking tensions with China. 2012, people were wondering why Japan were stoking tensions on the island. They may need this just to justify remilitarization and some ill-fated attempt to save their economy.
Yeah, their currency policy seems like a death wish. It's like a kamikaze policy in relation to their currency. And there's a real war going on with China and the rest of the world, the currency war, and it's hotting up. Now let's talk about China specifically. Over Christmas, the Obama administration quietly let it be known that the U.S. would be sending troops to 35 African nations. So America is not content in being 5 or 6 wars. They want to be in 35 wars plus. Okay, so only a few months prior to this, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton warned of a certain nation's colonizing Africa. Of course, I think everyone knows who she was talking about. Let's talk about this, Dan Collins.
Yeah, this is the China-Africa story is really an interesting issue that's not getting too much press, but China has basically replaced the West in Africa. They have built so many hydropower projects, roads, rails. If you ask anybody in African leadership or Africa themselves, they are very happy with what's going on with the China-African relationship. The synergies there are so good. You know, Africa has resources, China needs resources. Africa needs consumer products, but they need consumer products at Chinese price points, not Western price points. So Chinese consumer goods are a huge, hit in Africa. So the synergies are there. China Import-Export Bank is now funding African projects to the tune of twice what the World Bank is. So basically, in fact, a few weeks ago, African leaders warned the West that you're on the verge of being marginalized completely in Africa. And I think this is what might be triggering these potential troop deployments in Africa, is that we have no other card to play here. Our factories are gone. We don't make anything anymore. Nobody in Africa wants to buy credit default swaps. So it's the Chinese that are putting in the factories. In Ethiopia, it was also reported that China has just built 2 industrial zones, fully complete with ports, rail lines, power plants, and Chinese shoe manufacturers have relocated and are hiring over 10,000 people in Ethiopia to manufacture shoes. So this is the kind of development that Africa needs. It's not really troop deployments at this point. In the case of American troop deployments, this could be the last card we have to play. And based on our historical modus operandi, we will probably be sending troops into different countries, picking a dictator, having them control the country, and then they can default on the loans to China, and we can establish control there.
Yeah, let's talk about this Chinese-Ethiopian shoe factory for a second, because this signals a new chapter in that instead of looking at China as a source of extremely cheap labor, China is now generating finished goods, finished products. So this is why they emerge now as a global player in the finished goods markets. And so this is really cutting into what America and Europe has as their value-added, so-called, is the ability to maximize that extremely cheap labor by producing goods. Now China's moving into that market. Now let's talk a little bit about what China will be doing in addition to taking the prominent and dominant role in African economics. They are rumored to be introducing in 2013 some kind of gold-backed RMB, gold-backed Chinese currency, as a way to truly put the spike into the dollar as world reserve currency. Your thoughts, Dan Collins?
Well, absolutely. China's been, I'm not sure about a gold-backed renminbi. It's highly possible. So everybody knows China's been accumulating gold on a massive scale, for 6 or 7 years now. They keep their gold reserves, their real gold reserves, very tight and secret. They're also accumulating gold through their national state-owned banks. So it's very probable. I've written many times, I think the renminbi will be the final nail in the coffin of the dollar. And gold and renminbi together will be basically the 2 nails. There's also a third issue, which is the petro-yen. So Russia and China now are doing oil trading in Chinese yuan. China can set up Angola and Sudan in Chinese yuan. That's already in discussions. China is already the world's 2nd largest importer. With the new reserves out of the United States, they're expected to become more self-sufficient in oil. So the big oil trade now is going to be based around China. China will be the largest oil importer in the world, and a lot of those oil suppliers are not going to sell in dollars. They're going to sell in Chinese yuan. So you've got the issue of the renminbi being utilized through currency swap agreements all over the world now, over 20 countries. China's trade, about 20% of it this year went into renminbi from dollar. HSBC predicts within 3 years it'll all be renminbi, 70–80% of it outside of U.S. and Europe. So you've got the currency going renminbi, you've got the petro yuan, and you've got China's gold holdings. Eventually will spike the dollar. It's not a question of if, but when.
All right, let's ask the real interesting question here at year end. The Chinese official gold reserves are just over 1,000 tons, and everyone, I think, understands that they're going to announce a revision to that number. And I've heard estimates anywhere from 2,000 to 6,000 tons. The second biggest holder of gold, of course, is Germany with 3,000 tons, second behind the United States with ostensibly 8,000 tons. But I've also heard it said from Jim Rickards that in order for China to truly enact their plans for global financial economic domination, they would need a minimum of 4,000 tons, and they'll make an announcement at 4,000 tons. Dan Collins in Shanghai, can you fill us in on what your thoughts are here?
I'm a big fan of Jim Rickards. I agree. China will continue to accumulate gold. When they re-announce their holdings, is not sure. It may, could happen. It could happen tomorrow. Could happen 2 or 3 years from now. I believe they'll. As everybody knows, China's the world's largest gold producer, and none of it has left the country in 4 or 5 years. They just don't export it anymore. So, when those holdings are restated, not clear, and how much they'll be restated at, it could easily be 4,000 ton, 6,000 ton or more. As everybody knows, they've been on a buying binge, for half a decade plus.
All right, Dan Collins in Shanghai, that's all the time we have. Thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report.
Thanks, Max.
All right, and that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert. I want to thank my guest, Dan Collins, of the China Money Report. If you'd like to get in touch with us, tweet us at Keiser Report or on Facebook.com/Keiser Report. Until next time, Max Keiser saying bye, y'all.